In 7 days, you're gonna have loaves of bread just like this, cooling on little wire racks on your kitchen counter. But before we get to bread cooling on your counter, we're gonna need some starter. So today is day 1, and in 7 days you are gonna have a couple loaves of bread just like that cooling on your countertop. All we need to start this process is flour and water. That is it. So a couple things here. First, let's talk about equipment. We're gonna need a wide mouth mason jar, 32-ounce mason jar. I'll put all the stuff in the description. I really like this 9.5-inch, 10-inch ice cream spoon because it fits real nice for stirring, starter. You got a little 9-inch, little silicone spatula for scraping down the jar, and then lid. And your jar will probably come with like a 2-piece, which is cool, but I prefer these plastic ones. It's just me. Okay, quick sidebar, this is important. Sanitation. We wanna make sure that this jar is perfectly clean. Whether it's brand new, make sure you wash it and you rinse it thoroughly, get all the soap out of it. Or if you used it to make tomato sauce or pickles or whatever this used to contain in it, wash it, rinse it, sanitize it, boil it for 10 minutes and make sure that it's perfectly clean. Same goes for the lid. If you're using a 2-piece, get a freshie. Don't use one that's like stained red from tomato sauce or smells like garlic from a pickle jar. Get a fresh one, make sure your ring is not rusted. That's why I like the plastic ones. And tools, same goes with tools. This is a dedicated spatula. It is only for scraping down my jars of sourdough starter. And everybody in the house knows that. It's this weird little tiny black spatula. It lives in its own special drawer. So it never has oils or garlic or onions or curry or whatever, trapped in the material. Same here, make sure your spoon's clean. At this young stage, we're trying to develop all these microbes. It's more susceptible to contamination. So we're really just trying to make sure that that is not gonna be something that we're tripping over here as we're trying to start our starter. If it's gonna be, if there's gonna be a variable, it's probably gonna be your water quality. Let's make sure that it's not a matter of sanitation. So clean tools, clean jar, clean lid, and you're gonna be setting yourself up for success. Back to me. Scale. Everything that we're going to measure is going to be in grams. You cannot substitute volume measure here, and it doesn't work out. At your own risk, if you want to try and do volume measure, go for it. But measuring in grams is going to make this scalable, repeatable, and really reliable. Not only for measuring out our ingredients for our dough, but also for measuring the flour and water and feeding our starter. Now, water, flour, we'll get to this. Scale, I love this scale. It's waterproof. It's actually like my 3rd scale. Me, water, and scales, like we have a problem. This one so far, I haven't killed it. And to start here, we're gonna use the scale to measure the weight of our jar. We're gonna need to know how much this weighs so we always know how much starter is inside the jar. This is a Kerr brand mason jar. This one weighs 431 grams, Sharpie. And I'm just gonna make a note of that, 431. 430 for easy math. 1 gram's not gonna make or break anything here. This is gonna help us down the road. So makes math simple. So we're just kind of taking away some of the guessing that could take place later. Okay, so scale, spoon, spatula, mason jar lid, flour. I like bread flour for this. And I know if you do your YouTube, internet, Googling research, you're gonna find people that say you can only start a starter with whole wheat or dark rye or some kind of whole grain flour. And I know that you can, and I have done that before, but I'm trying to really simplify things. Because what if this is your first time, like starting a starter or getting into sourdough bread baking? Let's not have you buy things when you're not sure that you love doing this and the process of making bread and managing a starter. So you're gonna have bread flour to make your bread, so we're gonna use that bread flour to start your starter. There's also stuff out there where like adding raisins to introduce bacteria or whatever. No. Your starter is a biological leavening agent, meaning that it is a living, breathing thing. And we're trying to build a culture, a jar full of microbes and yeasts and bacterias. So that's what's going to take place over these next 7 days, and it is completely doable with bread flour. I've done this quite a few times. I've never had a problem using bread flour. We just want to make sure that it is not bleached and it's a high quality flour. I recommend King Arthur. It's a common brand. You'll find it in pretty much every city and every major supermarket. Central Milling, great mill. They make great flour. And I've done this also with the really cheap Leahy Mills 25-pound bag for $13 at Costco. Good value. Makes it so a loaf of bread costs about 55 cents, which is cool. Now, water, filtered room temperature water. There's a lot of variables to account for here, and we'll start with room temperature. So when I say room temperature, I'm thinking like 70 to 75 degrees. Your starter is going to be impacted by the temperature of its environment and the temperature of the flour and the temperature of the water. So cold will make your starter slow down its activity. Warm will speed it up. So depending on where you live and what time of year it is, right now I'm in the Rocky Mountains at 5,000 foot elevation, and it's cold right now. It's winter time. So things move a little bit slower in my kitchen this time of year. Summertime, it'll be 90 degrees outside and much warmer in my kitchen. So with the seasonality of my temperature changes, I have to make adjustments. And sometimes it's a real simple thing of just making the water colder in the summer, making the water warmer in the winter. So I'm going to say room temperature as a middle ground, and then through your own observations of what it looks like, how it feels, and its behavior, you can maybe make some adjustments. So no hard, fast rules here, but let's go with room temperature as a guideline. Water quality. Now, the water that comes out of your tap, it's treated. It's got to be made for it's got to be made to be fit for human consumption. Now, every municipality may treat it with more chlorine or less chlorine or antibiotics or fluoride or whatever it is that they're using to make it so it's safe to drink. But the whole point of that is to kill microbes that are in the water supply. We're trying to create this living, breathing, biological leavening agent. So using tap water can make it almost impossible to get a starter going. And you can go so far as, buying like a filtered water if your tap water is really, really bad. You can test it. There's a variety of different test kits that you can buy and just kind of see what's in your water. Water hardness, water softness is also going to have an impact on your starter. So some kind of room temperature filtered water. Who knows? Maybe start with your tap water. And if you get into like day 3 or day 4 and nothing's happening in this jar and nothing's alive, maybe your water's an issue. Or just start fresh from the beginning and use, if you've got a fridge filter or, a Berkey water filter, or you buy bottled water from Mountain Valley Spring or Sparklets, use that instead. Okay, so we've got our flour, we've got a room temperature filtered water. Here we go, we're gonna mix it together. We are going to start with 25 grams of bread flour and 25 grams of room temperature filtered water. And check it out, they're going into the jar. This is super easy. I know, I'm like, all this talking just for mixing flour and water, right? I'm just trying to give you some macro view here of what's going on. Anyway, there it is, water and flour. They're in the jar. They're being mixed with this awesome ice cream spoon. It makes it so I can reach in there. And it's gonna be thick. It's gonna feel doughy. And it's gonna kind of feel uncooperative. But that's okay. That's kind of like what we're expecting here. We're expecting it to be a thick, sticky mass. And it's gonna change over time. Now, one thing, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we're gonna mix this together, thick homogeneous thing. We'll use our spatula to kind of scrape down the side. The jar is pretty clean right now because this is our first time putting anything in it. But down the road, scraping down the jar is gonna make it so we have a clear window, a clear view, so we can observe what's happening in the jar. Because part of this whole process of building your starter, and I'm gonna talk about timeline in a second here, the time that we're choosing to do this is gonna make it so we have more time to see what its behavior is. And the more you get to know time and how it affects how your starter grows to its peak and then recedes down to, it's starving, is gonna really help you tune up when you feed your starter so it's ready exactly when you wanna make bread. And if we think of the bell curve, think of the activity level of starter as a bell curve, like there's like a very top peak, but somewhere just past peaking and somewhere just before peaking are all good places to use our starter, and we'll talk about that later down the road. But for today, we're just mixing flour and water. Timeline, I know I'm talking about time. 9 p.m. Make this a 9 p.m. project. So you're watching this video, don't start this right now, not unless it's 9 p.m., 8 or 9 o'clock. And that's gonna help you be ready to go when we get to day 7. So on the night of day 7, we're gonna feed this thing. And then when we wake up on day 8, it's gonna be ready to party and make a batch of dough. And that way we don't have to make any adjustments when we get going down to day 7 or whatever. Okay, so we've got our flour and our water mixed together. It looks like this. Maybe make a zoom in, take a look at that. Thick, sticky, kind of moves a little bit, not really, it's pretty sluggish. And rubber band, don't worry, tomorrow you'll need a rubber band. Lid, I'm using my plastic one because I like it better than the metal one, they don't rust. And then I've always got lids for canning because I can a lot of stuff from the garden. The lid's going on loose, right? So there should be a wiggle in it because eventually it's gonna produce carbon dioxide gas. We want those gases to escape. One last thing, we're gonna store this on a towel, unless you've got like butcher block countertops. Granite, Caesar stone, whatever, it's ice cold. It's always ice cold, even in the summertime. And just like our water temperature can increase or decrease the activity of our starter, so can its environment. But not just the air temperature, but also the surface it's sitting on. So I want to insulate it from the coldness of the granite because I want this to, start becoming a starter and not just a jar of flour and water. So I've got my starter area over here by the stove next to a burner that I never use. And it'll be safe there, it'll be out of the way, but I can also keep an eye on it. So that's it, that's day 1. Tomorrow, I will see you on day 2 and our starter, because technically it's gonna be starting a starter. We're gonna feed it tomorrow. And then it'll start to change. I think by day 3, we should start to see some real life in the jar. So I'll see you tomorrow on day 2, and we'll feed our starter.